I'm excited to bring you my latest video podcast, an interactive interview with Honorable Roderick Galdes, the Parliamentary Secretary of Social Accommodation. We delve into the recent Rental Reform Act and discuss the salient points and clarify the common questions. We're always looking to provide you the most up-to-date information from the market in this innovative format. I hope that this episode answers all your questions. However, feel free to leave any comments. Honorable Galdes, thank you for coming on the show. The new Rental Reform Act, it's coming into place on the 1st of January. What was the main motivation behind the new law?
First of all, I would like to thank you for the invitation. It's going to be an interesting time for the property market, even with this reform. Basically, in 2017, I was given the responsibility of piloting a new legislation in order to have a fair and balanced approach towards the property market between landlords and tenants. We didn't have a market 10 years ago. You know, I think you're better than me in the sector. So we didn't have a rental market that attracts foreigners, that attracts people to invest in the market. But during the last 3 years, the state brought huge investment in Malta. Many foreigners also came to work on our island. So basically, they needed a place where to stay. But this brought new demand of property rentals. But we didn't have a proper legislation as other countries in the EU had for the last even 30, 40 years, Germany, Italy, UK. So we initiated first by having a public consultation process, which took almost 2 years. But also we devised a study where we gave all the information, because we didn't have enough information about the property market, especially the rental market. So in 2017 we issued the white paper, which triggered a lot of discussion, and it was considered as the blueprint with all the information, how the sector is working, what are the pitfalls in the property market, especially when we had the last legislation amended in 2010. But still, with new investment coming in nowadays, and there were no proper contracts, no basic regulations, no landlord rights, no tenant rights. If something happens, everybody went to court to stay there for 3 years, litigating in the courts. So we needed to devise basic regulation. That's why we thought about making this new legislation is going to be the new reform from 2019.
So you created a standard. I mean, I think it's a great move. I think we needed it. There's always been, you know, not that people didn't know, but the market, I think, grew so quickly. We've had such a demand over the last years that the complaints, the disputes between landlords, they grew, and obviously this will settle a lot of the issues between those landlords that are increasing their prices without even, you know, any study based on, oh, I want this price. So I think that is a good move on the way, and the market, I believe, will with this new reform will move a bit much more smoother,
more professional,
more professionally. Yes, definitely.
Even for real estate agents.
Yes. I mean, the demand at times, I mean, for example, in summer it increases so much, prices go up in summer. In winter, prices go down. I think the reform, and I don't know if you agree, will stabilize the market.
That's in fact what we're doing is we're going to create a new state-of-the-art system. If you go, for example, to Italy or to UK, you have prices as per square meter.
Yes.
In Malta, unfortunately, in the rental market, we don't have enough information. Although maybe Slima, St. Julian's,
Yes.
tourist areas, they have some kind of information, but based on real estate agents. But the property market as a whole, we don't have enough information. So what happened is we had price inflation that caused a bit of stress even to certain sectors of the population. So we introduced the new housing benefit to curb the problem or to act as a cushion between those who cannot afford the rental market prices. The government intervened to help those families. However, we feel that we need to organize ourselves.
Yes.
We need to, nowadays we have a market and we need to sustain that market.
Yeah.
I don't want to stifle the market.
No.
I want the market to operate in a free manner because all markets are free, but we need basic regulations, simple regulations to have a contract, to register that contract. If something happens, the tenants can go to the housing authority to complain to the tribunal. If the landlord wants to complain, to have a redress instead of going to court for a minor dispute, he can go to a tribunal and in 5 days he will give him the notice with the decision of the tribunal. I think those are basic regulations that are coupled with this.
So you believe that it will deter rental prices increasing and will help keep the market?
Basically, I believe the market, there's the demand and supply, but there's also another factor that we need to have in mind, which is the salaries, the wage.
For sure.
If for a worker or if somebody is coming to rent a property and the landlord asks for inflated prices that the employee cannot sustain, I think that's why sometimes we feel that the market is not operating as it should be.
In fact,
so information is necessary, which is, I think, in all countries in EU have proper information about the rental property market. But also we have to bear in mind that we don't have enough money in all employees' pockets that they can afford every. So we need to have some information for those people who are lagging behind because of the rental property market.
In fact, there were some people that oppose the law, and because they felt that it was a bit too in favor of the lessee.
Not at all.
No?
Not at all. In fact, I think the vast majority of landlords and real estate agents understand what our approach is going to be. Who oppose the law? Certainly not, I think, personally I feel the vast majority, they don't have an issue with the legislation. I think it's better for them. Because when everything gets set in place and there will be professionalism in the sector, I think the landlord is going to be much more.
They will see the benefits.
The benefits.
For sure.
But those rogue landlords, though they don't want to make written contracts with the tenants, or they don't want the tenants to access social benefits, those weren't happy with the reform. Because there's the enforcement part, which is not. But for sure. In any country, you cannot rent a property which costs thousands of euros. I think it's a risk also for the landlord himself. If a tenant doesn't want to go out after...
He's not protected.
He's not protected. He has to go to court. You cannot simply throw a person outside. No. There's the human rights legislation. So they have to go to court to spend
fact, I've seen it
months.
In my time.
But that was the situation prior to this legislation.
Yes. The government developed a law, as far as I know, not to discourage rental investments. What was the wisdom behind capping the rental increases by 5% when you're in a long-term agreement?
Nowadays, I think 5%, considering that even we're receiving feedback from real estate agents that the market is stabilizing, that the increases that there were in 17, 18, they are stabilizing. I think 5% is quite good. But still, we are encouraging the landlords to keep the market stabilized in order to maintain the foreign investment coming in.
For sure.
If we won't be competitive in other sectors like gaming or the tourism industry, because we are increasing the prices, is going to affect the landlords themselves. And most of the landlords understand these issues as well. So basically, the government doesn't want to intervene in the prices. The prices are set by the landlords and the tenants themselves. It's private negotiating, and we are not going to involve ourselves in. But at least we are enacting this legislation to have basic regulations.
For the audience, the landlord sets the price, but during a long-term agreement, the maximum he can increase the price is 5%.
So what we are doing nowadays with this legislation, we are encouraging landlords to go for a longer period, longer term contracts. If the landlord decides to go for 2 years and 3-year contracts, even he can use that contract to invest in other properties by showing the contract to the bank, and the banks can also give more loans and more financial incentives on that contract. But still, we are giving fiscal incentives.
Yes.
Landlords can also save around 200 to 500 euros annually from tax reductions because of these incentives. If the landlords decide to have a contract less than 1 year, so the tenants needs to be given all the flexibility that can even terminate the contract beforehand, because it's not considered as a stronger title than a 3-year or.
As far as regarding termination of contract, lessees can, if it's 1 year, I think after
1 month.
1 month, and if it's
2 years, it's 2 months, 3 years, and 3 months for the tenants.
Right.
But the landlord, it's always 3 months to help the tenant find another property in the market.
But the lessor, this is so everyone understands, the lessor can only terminate towards the end of the agreement, is that correct? Or any time?
Towards the end of the agreement, and he needs to be given 3 months notice.
Either I'm going to extend
or not.
I'm going to, so that's fair. So blockchain. It's interesting to hear that the rental registry will be built on blockchain. Yes. It's very innovative. Does the fact that blockchain is supposedly impenetrable, one of the reasons why you used the technology, was security an important factor?
This is interesting, quite indeed. In fact, it's going to be the first reform and the first government department that we're going to use the blockchain technology. The reform itself, it's forward-looking. Yeah. So basically, we decided to use a technology which is always also forward-looking as well. And I can tell you that the Housing Authority is preparing a state-of-the-art system with GIS information, like you have also even in real estate. I think they use these kind of softwares. So with a click on your PC, you can find the street and the map and where's the property located. And even we're going to give access to stakeholders like real estate agents, which have a portfolio of 300, 400 properties, to access with a login the system. There will be the properties in place and all the contracts in the blockchain system, which is quite. In fact, we saw also other examples, Ireland especially. It was one of the countries that we visited. There's the Rent Regulation Board in Ireland, which they have the tenancy board agreement that operates similarly. Because nowadays we invested a lot of them in Maltese properties. We need to have something professional also in this.
Yeah, I think it's great. We're 2020 now soon. Yeah. So, and I think in Europe we'll be one of the first as well, I would imagine. Yeah, so that's great. So landlords obviously will be able to
access
register,
and they have
online,
will have the
online.
login account. They can see their properties, and also they can notify through the system the tenants that they want to extend the contract or not.
Okay.
So there are going to be many facilities, and the system itself notifies the landlord that it's time to tell the tenant when when the time is up.
So you're actually helping the landlord.
I was seeing these changes with my department. It's amazing.
Great.
How technology it's changing all the time.
Arbitration.
Yeah.
So disputes obviously have grown, like I said before. There will be a panel, a board?
Yeah.
How will it work?
I want to make it clear. Disputes related to evictions, they can only go to court because there's human rights issues, and arbitration cannot decide eviction process or similar issues like that. But we, from the consultation, we heard that there are many issues related to minor disputes, like, for example, lack of maintenance, the deposit retention, or problems with
on a daily
domestic
basis.
Items on a daily basis. That isn't feasible for the landlord to go to court. So with this new tribunal, within 5 days to 10 days, there would be a decision.
Okay.
And then the tribunal will communicate with the tenant and the landlord the decision of that tribunal. And I think this facilitates the process of minor
So they get an
dispute.
appointment, they go
As
up?
long as the dispute is not more than 5,000, they can go to the tribunal.
Okay.
But if it's more than 5,000, they have to end up in court, because it means that the amount, the cost, it's much more higher.
So that's good as well.
Yeah.
As a real estate company, we deal with disputes, and we
All
try
the
and
time.
help the
And
tenants,
and
and we try and help the landlords as well, because
you act as the tribunal.
And sometimes there's nothing we can do, really, except get the tenant and the landlord together and try and...
But at least the tribunal is going to be independent from both sides. There would be... it would be appointed by the president of Malta, not by the politician. It was a good discussion even in Parliament. And its intention is to facilitate, to try to mediate between the landlord and the tenant.
Because issues sometimes...
Because the landlord needs the tenant, and the tenant needs the landlord as well.
These issues go on and on and on, and then it erupts, and then they have major issues.
And also another issue which is in favor of the landlords. We had a situation where the landlord goes to court, asks for eviction, and also asks for the money that the tenant has to pay. And they end up for quite particular months until decision is being given by the courts with regards to the eviction. On the first, now with this new legislation, on the first date that the court has to decide, the eviction in order to keep the tenant or not. And then they can dispute with regards to the arrears and the rent arrears afterwards, but at least the landlord can get back the property.
Speeding up the process, because I also hear that sometimes it takes so long, the court, that they end up leaving the tenants, and then the landlord is stuck without
the property. That's what we don't want, and that's one of the major breakthroughs in this legislation in favor of the landlords.
Over the last couple of weeks, we've been discussing with agents, and one of the questions that has been brought to my attention is, we have a lot of companies that come to Malta. They're either working sometimes in the shipyard, sometimes in the gaming industry, and they are in Malta for a specific period of time. And the time would maybe be 8-9 months. What is the situation in terms of a lease agreement for the tenant because of the minimum, which there's a minimum of 1 year
I don't see an issue with that. There are the provisions in the law whereby tenants want to terminate the contract before, and they have to give 1 month notice to the landlord. But if a company rents the property from the landlord, it's not considered as residential. The company can use it as a guest house, or because there are many companies, they have their own properties, and they give accommodation for free to their workers. So basically, it's quite different. That's not a residential lease, but a service which the company is giving to its employees.
If the company rents it on behalf of their employee, there's no...
The relation is between the company and the landlord, not the workers that came for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and then they went abroad.
So if the employee, for example, some employees, because I've been in the industry for 25 years, some employees prefer to get the per diem, which is a daily allowance for accommodation, and they would rather rent
themselves. That's a residential lease.
Then that would be a residential lease.
They have to rent from a landlord.
So they would have to be upfront with the landlord.
But also, if there is evidence that this employee needs to work for 4 months, there's something written. They have a contract or something.
Yes.
That's an evidence for a lease to be in place for that particular period.
Thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
It's been a real pleasure.
And we continue to keep working with each other in order to sustain this effort, because it's important. It creates a lot of jobs.
Definitely. No, for sure. Thank you for joining us on the Real Estate Conversation.